UFC 309 is tonight, and I already did my predictions video. You'll find it on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Here's my prop bets video, and it's going to be a bit longer and a bit more in-depth because it's also my analysis of what I think is going to happen at the fights happening for the main card tonight. So I use Tapology and UFCstats.com from the UFC website to make these picks, so they're not just random guesses, they're fairly educated. I also use DraftKings Sportsbook features for using double chances of victories to help us give the best chance of a payout. Even though the odds are a little lower, it's better to get something rather than nothing. So let's get started. For the main event, I actually have three prop bets happening. And the first one is for Jon Jones to beat Stipe via knockout or submission. This is a pretty easy bet because we know that Jon Jones is a very gifted grappler. We know Stipe is a wrestler, and we know that Stipe has some extreme knockout power. But we also know, and we saw this in the Cyril Gane fight, that Jon Jones has an extremely high fight IQ, and he understands that wrestling is going to be the only chance he has in order to avoid that puncher's luck that Stipe Miocic is going to have. And we know that once Stipe is on the ground, he will look for that finish via a submission or a knockout via ground and pound or those 12-6 elbows that are now legal. The second pick is Jon Jones via decision. We know that Miocic has gone 5 rounds with some of the best fighters in the world like Daniel Cormier and Francis Ngannou. They're absolute killer knockout artists or submission artists, so we know that he has extreme durability. So I'm going to say that we don't want to count out Stipe's striking defense, his chin, and above all his submission defense. So the next best thing for us to hope for is going to be Jon Jones to win by decision. And I think that he has the ability to simply control the fight for 25 minutes in the octagon. So that's going to be my second prop bet. And of course, the third prop bet is going to be our safety prop, and it's Stipe Miocic to win via a knockout. The odds makers have made this at such a high odds that if this happens, you're going to probably counter any losses that you made on any other bets throughout the week and the weekend. So you might count out your losses and also get a nice payout from that. For the co-main event, I have, I think, just 2 prop bets for you, and that's going to be Charles Oliveira. The co-main event is going to be between Iron Michael Chandler and Charles do Bronx Oliveira. Charles Oliveira is my favorite fighter. I'm wearing his merch almost every day, so I'm definitely biased. But from what we have seen regarding Michael Chandler, he's extremely explosive and active in the first round. But if you could trick him into gassing out, he will be dead for the second, third, fourth, and so on rounds, and you can get an easy finish. We've also seen that his striking defense isn't the greatest, especially when you compare him to the other top lightweight fighters like Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje. So I'm going to do my first bet being Charles Oliveira to win via a submission or knockout. The second bet is because our safety bet is Michael Chandler is such an underdog that I would place a bet for Michael Chandler to win by knockout or submission as well. Like I said, in the early rounds, he's extremely explosive, and we know that he has great wrestling ability, which we saw in the first fight between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. So I can see him getting a potential early finish on Charles Oliveira with a lucky knockout hit that just puts him out and gets finished via ground and pound. And we saw in the first fight that Oliveira did get a very bad submission part and very good submission attempt by Michael Chandler, so he has those wrestling skills. So the second safety bet, prop bet, is going to be Michael Chandler to win via knockout or submission. For the Bo Nickel versus Paul Craig fight, I was thinking a bit about this, and we know that Nickel is an extremely talented wrestler and will look for that submission every single time you give it to him. And we know that Paul Craig is a gifted submission artist, beating some of the likes of Jamal Hill, Magomed Ankalaev, and a few other very strange wins that he has, but whenever he's an underdog, he seems to come out on top. So we know that when a wrestler comes up against an extremely gifted submission artist, it's usually going to end up being a striking matchup, which I think Bo Nickel is going to have the advantage on. When we saw Kyle Barado go up against Paul Craig, Kyle was piecing him up on the feet and didn't bother going to the ground with him. And we know that Bo Nickel, we haven't seen him get rocked or even stunned at all. So it's a safe assumption that his striking defense is where it needs to be. So I would still put money on Bo Nickel to win mainline. But the prop is just to add Bo Nickel by submission or knockout. So for Karine Silva versus Vivian Araujo, I have little to absolutely no knowledge or interest in this fight or the fighters. So I didn't really do much research, but I'm picking Karine Silva to win this. I think Karine is on a better win streak right now, a better submission artist. I just think when it comes to wrestling, strikers always go with the wrestler. So I'm picking Karine Silva to win. For the opening fight on the main card of UFC 309, give me a Mauricio one-shot Ruffy going up against James Lontop. Give me Ruffy to win by knockout. This dude is only 10-1 and only 1-0 in the UFC, but he has only ever won or lost by knockout. That one loss is a second round knockout, and so far we see Ruffy knock people out in the first round. He's been on a 5-fight win streak lately, and he's looking absolutely unstoppable. And his opponent is a bit of a nobody, which I believe that due to Mauricio Ruffy being part of the Fighting Nerds team, I believe the UFC is just trying to turn this fighter into a superstar due to him being on that team, because all the other Fighting Nerds are winning and getting these knockouts and finishes via submission, knockouts, and yielding perfect results. So I think Dana White wants to take advantage of the hype and bring them all together. So give me Mauricio Ruffy by knockout. After all, these are my predictions for UFC 309, specifically the prop ones. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. So let me know your predictions for the night's fights.